Hi, I'm Rachel Gray, and today I'm going to show you how to make 5-spice ribs. You can find this recipe on my blog at cookingwithrachel101.com. But since I wrote that, I went to Morimoto's Asia in Honolulu, and he has a sticky rib, Chinese rib, that he deep fries, and they're fantastic. So I've taken this recipe and sort of modified it, and I'm going to show you today how I've done that. So the first thing we have to do for the ribs is go ahead and bake them. I'm just going to take a rack of ribs right now. On the recipe, it's enough dry rub and sauce for 2 ribs, but I'm just going to do 1 today. And then what I do is I just go ahead and make up the dry rub, and I put it in a plastic container and store it until I need it. And I do that same with the sauce. I just put it in a jar, put it in the refrigerator, label it, and then I know I have it when I want it. So I'm going to take a broiling pan. I'm just going to take some tin foil and I'm going to line it. I'm just making a nice envelope to sort of cook my ribs in. So I want my tin foil to be nice and long. And as I seal it with the dry rub, it's just going to kind of steam a little bit in there, and it's going to make it tender and juicy. And these are baby back ribs. And that's a whole rack, and I'm just going to take it, put it down in the middle of my tin foil. And now I'm going to mix together my dry rub, and we're going to rub it all over. So the dry rub consists of only 4 ingredients. We're going to use 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of Chinese 5-spice powder, just put that in with the brown sugar. Then I need a tablespoon of kosher salt and a tablespoon of pepper. So I'm just going to mix this together in this bowl, and then once it's all mixed together, and remember I'm only going to use half of it right now, I'm just going to spread it over my ribs. I'm going to go ahead and rub that in. We want it to get all over the ribs. And then turn it over. Rub that all in, and I put them in the pan rib side down. And then I'm going to take my tin foil lid, and I'm just going to crimp this around and make a little envelope, and my ribs are going to be inside of my envelope. So it looks like this, and I'm just going to bake this in a 300-degree oven for 3 hours. Okay, while our ribs are cooking, we're going to make the sauce. And I will admit the amount of ingredients in this sauce is almost comical. There's like 13. But that's why it's nice to make a double batch, and then you kind of have some in the refrigerator for later. So I'm going to make it in my blender, and I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I'm going to use 1.5 cups of ketchup, which was about what I had in this bottle to begin with. I'm going to use 6 tablespoons of brown sugar. And so that is 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of Cajaun seasoning. And 2 teaspoons of chili powder. Yes, I know I have the industrial quantity of chili powder here. 1.5 teaspoons of ground mustard. I'm going to use 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. Use 2.5 teaspoons of molasses. And I'm just going to pour that into my tablespoon, and then I'm just going to do it almost full. I'm going to do a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar, I'm going to use a tablespoon of sesame oil. And this is the toasted sesame oil that you want. Without the chili, it's not chili oil, it's just the toasted sesame. 1.5 teaspoons of sriracha. 1 teaspoon of chopped fresh ginger, and yes, I'm gonna cheat and use the stuff in the tube. I don't often do that, but I do with ginger. And finally, I'm going to use 2 cloves of garlic. Just gonna peel the outside off. I just crack it a little bit and then peel it. And then I'm just gonna put it through a garlic press. Yes. That's 1. And 2. And then I'm gonna blend that all up. So I'm just gonna give it a blend in the blender. And there you have it. And I can use half of it today, and then I can just put the rest in the refrigerator in a glass jar, and I can use half of it when I do them again. It's been 3 hours, and I've taken my ribs out of the oven. I'm just gonna open up my little envelope. There they are. So they're dark from the dry rub. So I'm just gonna lift them off the tin foil. Oh, they're really tender. They're kind of breaking apart a little bit. 3 hours is about what you want. If it's longer than that, then they'll just kind of fall apart and then you have a hard time frying. So now I'm just gonna take a knife and I turn them over so that the bones are facing up. And then that way I know where to put my knife to cut them apart. So I want to cut them apart because I'm gonna take them and fry them. And then I'm gonna take some cornstarch. I've got about 1/2 cup on this plate right here. And what I'm gonna do is they're not that hot, I'll just use my hands, but I'm just gonna coat each side with some cornstarch. Just get them like that. Because the only part that really is gonna touch the pan to fry them, since I'm not deep frying them, if I were deep frying them, I would just cover the whole thing in cornstarch. But because I'm just gonna fry them up in a little bit of oil, I probably have about 1/4 inch of vegetable oil in this pot. It's getting nice and hot. You wanna fry them about 350 degrees. That's how hot you want the oil to be. You want it to be hot, but not too hot. I have now dipped both sides of my rib in cornstarch, and I'm going to now fry them in the oil. If your oil is smoking, it's too hot. If you want to know if it's hot, you can just put a little bit of the cornstarch in there. If it starts to foam up and sizzle right away, it's ready to go. You can hear those sizzle as I drop them in. And I'm just going to fry them on either side. Okay, so I'm just going to flip these now. What I'm looking for is a nice golden brown crust on the outside. Once they're nice and golden on both sides, then I'm just going to kind of shake them off a little bit. And I'm going to put them onto my platter. And while my second batch cooks, I will put some barbecue sauce on these. I've got my barbecue sauce right here, and I'm using a silicone brush, and I'm just gonna paint each one liberally with some barbecue sauce. And once one side is finished, just going to take my tongs and flip them over and paint the other side too. It really only takes a few minutes to fry these. And they're best like anything fried, served piping hot. And there you have it, the 5-spice ribs. You can find this recipe and over 200 other recipes on my blog, cookingwithrachel101.com. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I'll see you next time.